Alrighty, so good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the National Transition Community of Practice meeting for today, March 18th. My name is Michael Storr and I work for the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, or NTAC, and I co-facilitate the National Transition Community of Practice with Joan Kester. And Joan, if you want to.
Hello, everyone. This is Joan Kester. I am at George Washington University. I run a master's and certificate program in secondary transition.
Great, thanks. So we're really fortunate today to have with us a team from Connecticut who's going to be presenting on secondary transition, their youth advisory board. So with us today is Michael Scanlon, Emily Ball, Beth Reel, Missy Wrigley, and Alicia Tracus. So we'll hear from them in a minute. Also today, we are going to talk a little bit about the upcoming NTAC capacity building in Charlotte and the face-to-face meeting for the National Community of Practice. And then I want to just talk about also our next meeting and the topic of discussion and see if folks are interested in presenting, as well as if folks have any updates or things that they want to share from their state or organization. So with that, we are going to go ahead and switch over to our folks in Connecticut. And Missy, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn this to you. We would,
okay.
So yeah, if you just want to share.
There we go.
There you go, fantastic. And we would ask folks, if you're not presenting, if you could mute, please. I'm hearing one of our furry friends in the background, so that's always good. All right, Missy, you're on. And folks.
All right, thank you very much. So Beth, Michael, Emily, you all there?
We are here.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that is my furry friend, and I'm going to be one of the speakers. Unfortunately, the internet.
No worries. We'll just listen to them. It's fine.
Yeah. The internet in my office decided to go down about 20 minutes before I was supposed to be on the call, so I raced home. So I apologize for the 10-month-old puppy in the background.
No worries.
So
we all have dogs, so no worries.
Yeah. So without further hesitation, Connecticut Youth Advisory Board. So Missy, we could go on to the next slide. So these are some of our fantastic members. And the two on the left, Emily and Michael, will be speaking with you today as well in a few minutes. So go ahead on to the next one. So my name is Beth Reel. I apologize. I have a little bit of a vocal cord thing going on, so excuse my cracks, squeaks, and breaks. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the Youth Advisory Board, and then Michael and Emily and Missy and Alicia will all jump in. So I will let them introduce themselves as they hop on. But this is all of our information and contact information should you want to email any of us. So go ahead. Okay. So my name is Beth Reel, and I am the transition coordinator at the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, which is Connecticut's federally funded parent training and information center. So if you're not familiar with parent training and information centers, each state has at least one. We're a network, and many states have more than one, but Connecticut, being geographically small, we have one center. And so I have been with the center for about, I want to say 17 years. I lose count after a while. And I've been the transition coordinator about 12 years, 11 or 12 years, and doing youth advisory board work, doing youth work, more self-advocacy focused work for about 8 years, and then the youth advisory board work, which we'll talk a little bit about. So The Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board, oh, you can back up actually, yeah, started when Connecticut's Secondary Transition Community of Practice started. So it wasn't always called a Youth Advisory Board. It was, I believe the title was the Youth Voice and Enhancing Youth Voice and Leadership practice group at the time. And we started the group as with a focus on getting youth involved in every aspect of planning for youth at secondary transition level. In my work as a parent coordinator and transition coordinator at the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, I noticed that I would go to many, many, many meetings, as I'm sure you are all very familiar with, and youth would not be sitting at the table planning for their lives, whether that was in IEP meetings or local, state level, or even federal level meetings. We just, we were there planning, and with all of the best intentions. We really, the people that work in this field, I know we all care very much, but it just was this glaring missing piece. And so I brought that to the community of practice, and the people that were starting the community of practice embraced the idea completely and wholly. So that's where we got our start. And then about 3 years ago, we actually became the Youth Advisory Board, the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board. Oh, that one's not mine. That puppy's not mine. So we work with youth with disabilities age 14 to 26, and the focus is enhancing student voice and getting student voice into these places where it has been missing. Okay, so go ahead, next slide. So we serve, the Youth Advisory Board serves as support or resource, as a support system or a resource to school districts, to agencies, state agencies, our agency, the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, any organization that wants to bring youth in and have youth voice at the table. And really many of the agencies have embraced this and allowed the youth to really take the lead in the planning. So that's been really exciting. Youth provide information on how actually their needs should be looked at and met. Oftentimes we actually don't really understand the focus, their focus. We think our focus is their focus, and it's not. We often don't understand the experiences that they have. We think we know, and again, I know we all have the best intentions, but so often I've been speaking with a group of youth, and I've said, well, what about, what do you think about a topic or subject? And they'll give me an answer that I never would have thought of, not being a young person with a disability. So it's so valuable to allow youth at the table, have youth at the table, really to let the youth take the lead. And then we didn't just want to always ask them to do things. So we didn't, always want to be asking them to sit at the table, although Michael and Emily will both say that I asked them to do a lot. And they graciously accept most of the time. But we also wanted to support them. So kind of the idea of what's in it for them. And so not only is it a great activity for resumes and portfolios, as it says on the slide, but we also try to support them in whatever their goals are. And so many of the youth that we are working with have goals to be public speakers and to share their information and their experiences to help others. And so we do a variety of things to support them in achieving their goals. So we'll talk a little bit more. There's a couple of slides about that after. So go ahead to the next slide.
So let me just, I'm not sure if you're going to mention this. This is Missy.
Sure.
But so we have a picture of the youth up there in the corner, and the gentleman that's sitting in the wheelchair, Jake, had the opportunity to speak and was one of our keynote speakers at our back to school, our statewide back to school session this September for all pupil personnel directors and staff. And he did just an awesome job. And so he actually had everybody there extremely excited about what he was saying. So it's, you know, it's really, we're not just asking them to speak with some of our smaller groups, but this was, you know, we had a few hundred people there, and Jake did a great job, and we had 2 other youth that were there also. But it's phenomenal how well they speak for us and for themselves.
Yeah, and so Jake, we were going to mention this a little bit further at the end, but we have been invited to do a couple of presentations at the NTACT Capacity Building Institute in May in North Carolina. And so Jake is one of the youth attending, and then standing next to Jake, to the left of Jake, is Michael, who is on the call as well, and he also will be attending. So anybody who is there will have the pleasure of, and then Emily, who is also on the call but not in the picture, will have the pleasure of meeting these young people that we have had the pleasure of working with for several years now, actually. So thank you, Missy, for mentioning that. Okay. So the members of the Youth Advisory Board, as I mentioned before, are ages 14 to 26. The Parent Training and Information Center funding allows us to serve students and youth up to age 26. So that's why we chose that age. And then we have the mentors that are over age 26. And I'll be honest, the reason why we have mentors over age 26 is because we get to know the youth that we're working with, and then they, you know, get older, and I really didn't want to let many of them go. So I was like, how can I keep them on? And suddenly this idea of mentors came about. And so that's really just us not wanting to let them go, but they have just, you know, rose to the occasion, and they really are students and youth who have experiences that are very helpful to the younger members of the Youth Advisory Board. So they are truly mentors in every sense of the word. But I joke with Emily and Michael all the time, and I'm like, you're never leaving. You're going to stay on the Youth Advisory Board forever. And they just roll their eyes at me and laugh. So we talk a lot about building leadership skills. And we also provide experiences so that students and youth can build those leadership skills. And then we have a listserv, an email list that has, I think it's more than 150 students now. And we have about 25 active participants. And we'll talk about what they do, because there's a lot of different ways to be a participant in the Youth Advisory Board. Okay, Missy, next slide. So the Youth Advisory Board meets 4 times a year after the Community of Practice meetings. So our Community of Practice meetings in Connecticut, we have the whole group meets first, and then we break out into our practice groups. And so we have our practice group meeting. But what we found was, you know, our community practice meetings are during the day, in the morning, during the week, and it's challenging for many people to attend for the Youth Advisory Board practice group meetings. And so early on, we realized that we needed to create lots of different ways for youth to be involved. And so I'll talk about the other pieces after. There's another slide about that. But decided that we would not only hold the meetings after the community of practice meeting, but we would do phone and web-based meetings. And then we haven't done this yet. Actually, our web-based meeting, or our phone and web-based meetings start next month. But we also talked about doing a yearly or twice a year in-person meeting in the evening. We haven't quite worked out the details of that yet, but that's something we've been thinking about as well. And so also, physical attendance is not mandatory. So you can be a part of the Youth Advisory Board and not ever attend a community of practice meeting, though it's encouraged, and not ever come on a call or come to any of the evening meetings that we hope to have. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. There's, like I said, there's another slide about that. But we really wanted people to participate in any way that they wanted to participate. And so we didn't want to start making meetings mandatory and things like that. So go ahead for the next slide. Okay, so we're going to turn this over to Michael Scanlon to talk about working with youth.
Thank you, Beth. Hi, everyone. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Michael Scanlon, and I thought I have a lot to kind of cover, so I know I want to be mindful of time, but I think I would prefer to kind of give you just like a 30-second overview of how I came to this work. I think that'll be really impactful for you all. So I'm so passionate about transition work and supporting youth and young adults because of my own experiences. I'm someone who has a psychiatric disability from a traumatic brain injury when I was 4. And so I think really my defining purpose really stems from how that changed my life, you know, for better or worse, and thinking back. And as Beth said, I am one of the older mentors. I just turned 30 in January. So I think, you know, again, it's a big, you know, decade, a big birthday. And so I've been kind of reflecting a lot on a lot of that. But truly, I think, you know, my passion and, you know, both what great things happen because of that, but also maybe some lessons learned. So I think that's how I kind of approach the work, is how can I share what I went through to support others? So I think what's helpful first is talking about how to engage youth and young adults effectively. And I think you'll see on the left slide, there is a graphic, youth and young adult voice, the ladder of youth and young adult voice. And what's really cool about this is the framework. It's by Roger Hart, who's a sociologist, and this was developed in the early 90s. And what's really cool is that we use it kind of as like an awareness builder. And what I mean by that is we all know what youth engagement is, but not everyone knows how to do it correctly. And I hate to use the word correctly because I think I'm kind of like the, you know, I don't like the rules kind of, you know, I'm not like a rule kind of guy, but what's really nice about this is it's almost like it gauges, hey, where are we when we're working with young adults? And really it brings you back to that moment. You'll kind of see on the bottom, rung number 1. And as you go higher up, it's, you know, it's more effective, it's more inclusive, and it's more respectful of youth and young adults. So you'll notice rung 1, young people are manipulated. Young people are manipulated. Rung 2, young people are decoration. Tokenism is rung 3. Assigned and informed, rung 4. Rung 5, young people, consulted and informed. Rung 6, adult initiated and shared decision making with young people. And rung 7 is young people lead and initiate the action, and rung 8 is young people and adults share decision making. And so what's interesting is to give you some kind of background information of what does that look like. Because I know this is kind of in theory, so to make it kind of more alive for you all, what I mean by that is, for example, I'll use my own experiences. So a step 2, where decoration, I had an experience with, you know, in my working career. About 2 years ago, some colleagues asked me to attend a federal site visit. And these were some colleagues I did not know, you know, that well, you know, beyond some emails and everything. And it was a, you know, federal SAMHSA site visit. And I walk in there and I wasn't prepared. There was really no, hey, Michael, there was no preparation. No, here's what we want you to talk about. It was really just, hey, kind of show up. And a lot of factors play into that, which I'll kind of talk about in a few minutes. But bottom line, when I walked away from that meeting, I kind of felt exploited just because I was there to make them look better for their site visit. Again, maybe like on a step 3 or 4, what would that look like? And again, I think what's curious to note is the end goal isn't always rung 8. I just want to make that really clear. So I know, like, that's an amazing thing for shared decision making, but I just want to throw that out, that I really consider at all costs avoid rungs 1 through 3. There should be no reason for any of that. Depending on where you are and what you're doing, I think rung 4 and 5 can be perfectly fine. It's all really based in intention and, how you're approaching everything. But a step 3 or 4 could really look like, I was actually asked to speak at a school, in a neighboring town. And again, wasn't prepared, had no details or logistics. And again, that was kind of on me because I was so new in terms of, not learning to be more direct and everything, but went in there, and didn't really feel safe. And I think, again, with my trauma history, looking for that emotional safety, no concrete information or follow-up from the coordinator who really booked that session, that was just a really poor experience. And so I think being mindful of who am I being when working with young people. And again, for an example of anything really from rung 6 through 8, I always feel valued. Again, not that 4 and 5 are bad, but I always feel amazing. When we are working in the rung 6 through 8, that's really where we want to be at. So just to kind of, you'll see on the right side, things to consider. I'll try to, again, keep this brief, but some of the foundational values, how we try to approach everything, I think the first thing is communication. And what I mean by that is, I think, first of all, laying the foundation. And by that, I mean, convening a purpose and really finding out what works for each and every young adult. There's a saying that we like to, in the mental health community, nothing about us without us. And that's so true in terms of young adult engagement. No matter who you are, what your role is, I'd say the second facet of communication is be willing to have hard conversations. And what I mean by that is it's almost more uncomfortable to not go there with young adults and pretend everything's okay. I think we all have moments where maybe we weren't as direct and upfront or willing to go there, and then maybe you'll find, oh, these young adults are drifting away, they're not getting back to us, etc. Well, it's probably because you weren't direct and upfront. I'd say the third facet under communication is co-creating your professional relationship with them and really asking young adults, what do you need? And by that, that can look different, again, depending on what your role is, but really just going there. Like for me, what I need before I speak is to have a clear outline of, okay, like here's how much time I have, here's what I need, and Beth is so great about that. So we've co-created our professional relationship to build that success. And I'd say the last thing under communication is to really be open to change and flexibility. Flexibility in any young adult work, as we all know, is so key. I think young adults are balancing so much between school and work and social and this and that, and just planning and just having time to have fun and, live their life. So I think as not fun as it is as adults to have to deal with last minute changes, be open to just being as gracious as possible. Makes all the difference. And something I'm really passionate about is being strength-based. And, coming from, my own, school experiences, young adults probably hear all day long what's wrong with them or what they can't do or what's harder for them. And not all of that is really upfront or intentional. It could just be implied, I guess I can say it that way. So really working with young adults and identifying and praising and really cultivating that discovery process is huge. Like for me, I'm more of the artistic kind of guy. I'm not really even though I'm a public speaker, I'm not always that confident, but that's something that coming from that strength-based perspective, honing that and supporting in adults. The third thing is opportunity and support. And what I really want to share with you all that makes a difference is you really need both. And what I mean by that is if you just have one, it probably won't work that well. And to elaborate, for example, again, like I shared with some poor public speaking experiences, that was the opportunity part without the support part. But on the other hand, if you have so much support, a young adult can feel smothered and not able to grow. And that's like the helicopter kind of parenting aspect where you want to make the young adult feel so safe that that they never have the chance to grow and to learn. And, and really I think how we approach it is there is no failure, there's only feedback. I have a gold medal in failure, trust me. We could talk for hours on all the things that I didn't do so well, but it really is getting in that mindset of there's no judgment, we're gonna have fun with this, and that's really how we try to approach it. It's really that Goldilocks approach, not too much, not too little, let's keep it in that sweet spot. A really important facet is supportive leadership, and I think we're really big on a genuine belief that young adults from all walks of life can be successful. There is no question. And to get there, I think we need the top-down approach. Again, the bottom-up approach, I obviously support, but I've seen a lot of great people and programs tanked by poor leadership. And so really being mindful of cultivating buy-in and just that genuine belief of success in your organization, just because I'm sure we all can talk about experiences where that hasn't been that great. So really, again, we'll talk more about this in North Carolina. This is, just a little bit of an overview, but the next one I want to mention is acknowledging ego. And this is where you're all going to be like, okay, what's he talking about? Like, I didn't expect this, but what I mean by that is it's okay to be wrong. And I think for me that I'm even talking to the young adults too in the room, just because I wanted to bring this up because I've seen it where, under stress, under pressure, we all can get kind of, locked into this pattern. However, stress kind of, accumulates in your life. Like I know for me, when I'm really stressed, my ego pops out. Like I'm really judgmental. I'm really fixed and rigid. So I think because this is on all of us to create positive change, really being mindful of, again, who am I being in this moment with young adults? The next one is power and relationships. Again, it kind of goes back to the supportive leadership, but just being really aware that young adults may not always be comfortable with adults at first. So I think being okay that great things take time. Rome wasn't built in a day. So I think being open to having that flexible relationship-based approach. And again, going back to how you want to work together. Individual versus system. What I mean by that is, as an adult ally, being flexible to go from individual level where you're curious with your young adults and supporting them, being real, being open, to connecting them system-wide to resources, community efforts. And I think the last one I want to mention is boundaries. And that's really important because just really stating what you can and can't do and co-creating a relationship from there. Again, an example would be if you're working with young adults, if you can't answer a phone after 6 o'clock, say that. Don't leave your young adult guessing. Don't try to be supportive in theory and say, oh, call me anytime, because a young adult's going to take that literally and call you up at 10 o'clock if they need something. So it's those little things all together that create positive change. And again, I know I went through this really quick for timing's sake, but happy to answer any questions, and I'll look forward to speaking more in North Carolina on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. That was great. Okay, I believe the next slide is Emily.
Right. So I'm Emily Ball, and I have a degree as a disability specialist, and I really like the prospect of like reaching out to youth and, sharing my experiences and things like that. So, I will be talking about why youth advisory groups are important. Youth advisory groups are important because they give youth a chance to showcase their skills and experiences. They are also a crucial tool to educate educators and other professionals working with disabled youth. For example, other youth like to know that they aren't alone in their experiences, such as being nervous to attend IEP meetings. Youth advisory boards are very beneficial to those working with disabled youth because we can give them insight they never would have had. For example, the way that students are treated, such as not babying a student. Youth advisory boards are also empowering to the person because they can have their experiences help someone else. They can also enhance one's leadership abilities.
Emily, did you want to say a little bit more about your experience in the Youth Advisory Board and how your calendar has changed significantly?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sure.
I'm just,
you
don't have to. I was just curious.
I think, my experiences, it's been really enhanced since I became involved with this because just the knowledge of being able to share it with people is really great. So, and I look forward to explaining this more in North Carolina. So
can I share something about you, Emily? This is Missy again.
Sure.
So Emily, we've had the privilege of, we have a transition symposium that we offer every year. It's a 2-day event. And Emily, you've been with us 2 years? Or last year was your first full year with us?
Well, yeah, I think last year was the first, last year was the first one.
Okay, we have a planning board that plans the symposium, and when we invite youth to come to this symposium, some of our comment was, well, why don't we have youth on the board to help us support that? And so Emily volunteered to help us with that, and she has been a wonderful asset to our planning team. And this year, we've actually added another youth, but Emily has given us some really great insight as far as what youth will enjoy at a session like this, because we always have the educator focus lens on. And so she's really been great at helping us do that and set up a set of videos to watch during one of our lunch sessions, and it was great. It was really great. So we really appreciate her help there.
Yeah, Emily has been absolutely wonderful, and I shared this with her a couple meetings ago, but our first transition symposium meeting, Emily brought up the idea of, we were talking about creating the youth strand or enhancing the youth strand that we already had, and Emily brought up a presentation about sexuality and gender, and she thought that would be really important for youth. And there was some pushback from some people on the team, none of them are on this call, that this might not be an appropriate topic for youth. And so Emily and I talked about that, connected, and we really kind of pushed that a little bit more than, you know, just dropping it and letting it go, because
Right.
we didn't bring Emily to the table to just ignore her suggestions. And so, so it turned out last year we had 2 presentations on sexuality at the Youth Advisory Board meeting. So we really support and encourage, and it's been, you know, a major piece of our planning. Is there anything else you want to say, Emily?
Not really, not that I can think of right now.
Okay. Well, thank you. And what
You're
she
welcome.
didn't say is, since doing some of these presentations with us, her calendar has become quite full. And so I've asked her to do a couple of things, and she already has speaking engagements at those times. So that's been really exciting to see. Some school districts have invited her in to talk with students. So, so we're excited to see that happening. So thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
Okay, so next slide. So this is just an example. Christopher McCrae was actually one of our first members before we were even called the Youth Advisory Board. I worked with him on the first grant that I'll talk about in a minute. And he was doing some speaking at a conference. And so one of the things we realized was he didn't have any material to market himself. So we supported him by creating this half-sheet flyer so it could be on all of the tables at the conference. And then we also got him some business cards as a public speaker. And so that's one of the things that we encourage students to have as they're coming and speaking on the panels, is something that they can hand to people. So if people say, hey, I'd really like you to come out and talk to the students, you know, they have something that they can give people so that they can reach out. So some of the students have done that, and then we also encourage them to make professional Facebook pages, even though they have all told me many, many times that Facebook is for their parents and that they don't do Facebook. And I ask them to humor me, because the people asking them to do presentations are as old as their parents, if not older. And so that's where people are looking for them on Facebook. And so, so we've worked with a couple of Youth Advisory Board members to help them get their Facebook profiles as a professional public speaker up and running. And not everybody wants to do that, but when people want to do that, we support and encourage them to take those steps. So next slide. So one of the pieces that has been really exciting, like I said, I've been doing this work for a long time. And for a while, when we first started doing this work, I was involved with a couple of RSA grants to start off with. And it was really very few of us that were consistently saying, students need to be at the table, students need to be running their IEP meetings, students need to be, you know, at the table, giving their opinions, their voice. We need to bring them into the planning committees. And it's been several years since the federal government and the state had really started talking about the same ideas. Bringing students to the table, enhancing student voice, student-run IEP meetings. And so as the federal government started talking about that more and more, and we started talking about that in Connecticut more and more, I think it was 3 years ago. Missy, do you remember? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that we decided in our NTEC state plan to really create some goals that were student focused and based on all of the work that we had been doing in Connecticut. So it was really exciting. when this plan came together, when we were, you know, sitting at the Capacity Building Institute, sitting at the table, creating the plan and getting these goals into place. So this has been a major driver in our state to have this information in here. And so we have two main goals, and one is student-focused planning benchmarks about increasing the percentage of students participating in and facilitating their IEP meetings. In Connecticut, we call them PPT meetings, because in Connecticut, we rename everything.
So true.
I don't know. We do. We really do. I don't. It's quite amusing. But students participating in and facilitating their IEP meetings, and it's been a focus for several years. We're slowly starting to see it. More and more districts are starting to, you know, really come to the table and say, wait a second, you know, what are we doing here? Why are we all sitting around the table talking about this student and telling this student what they're going to be doing? Why don't we help the student and support the student in taking the lead? Because this will only enhance their ability to do that throughout their lives. And so we could go on and on about that. That's a whole nother presentation. So that's one of the goals. And then, do you want to flip to the next slide, Missy? So then the other student-focused goal is increasing opportunities across the state for students with disabilities to participate in co-curricular and extracurricular community activities by creating the Youth Advisory Board. And so when this was put into the state plan is actually when we renamed the Student Youth Voice Practice Group to the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board. We've really formalized the name. And so this has been really helpful in setting the stage for our team, our state team, then to go out and really advocate for these activities in a variety of different places. And it's been really exciting because what started as just a few people working on this, you know, this project, this, not even a project, but working on this idea and taking it and, you know, continuously saying it over and over again, people really get it now. And so we are, you know, seeing the fruits of our labor really expand, and it's quite exciting. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so funding. So when I was working as the co-facilitator, I'm now the facilitator of the Youth Advisory Board Practice Group, but I was a co-facilitator, and we were trying to get all of this off the ground. I would go to the NTAC conferences, and I would go to the parent training and information conferences, and any conference that I was at where they were talking about youth work and Youth Advisory Board work, I would go to those presentations. And my first question was always, where do you get the money to do this? Because working for a PTI, we're a small nonprofit, and we work with families with children with disabilities from birth to 26. And so that's quite a range, and there's a lot of initiatives within that range, that range of ages. And so transition is a big part of what we do, but youth work was not a major focus of what we did. And so I really wanted to know how people were doing this, because I did not have a lot of funding to get this off the ground. And so several years ago now, we were invited in to a team. It was an RSA grant, which I'm totally blanking on the name right now, but it was a RSA transition grant to increase transition outcomes for students with disabilities. And so we were invited in, and at that point, there was some funding to start working with students around self-advocacy. So that was our basis, was bringing students in, doing presentations with students. So the young man, Christopher McCrae, that you saw on that half sheet, he was actually one of the first people that I presented with. And we used that funding to then go out and do these presentations throughout the state. And he really connected with many, many youth with disabilities who had not ever really spoken at that level with another student, another person with a disability that was successful. He was quite successful. He was just about to graduate from college, and he eventually went on to get his, I think he's working on his master's now, but at that time he had been in college. And as I saw these relationships start to build with this young man doing these presentations for other youth, I realized that that's where the magic was. The youth-to-youth connection and the relationships. And for students that, as Michael said, there's a lot of information given to them why they can't do things and what's wrong with them and all of that. And my focus in working with youth has always been, what can you do? The strength space. What are you good at? So everybody's good at many things usually. And so I love to see the spark when we would have a conversation, and this young person sitting in my office saying, I'm stupid and I can't do this and I can't do that. And I remember one in particular, I asked her what she wanted to do, and she said, well, I love animals. I actually bake organic dog biscuits and I sell them in the local shop down the road. And I was like, wait a second. So you're sitting here telling me all the things you can't do, but you're actually running a business. And so just looking at those things that students are good at and then, helping them to build on that. So that's where it started. It started really with the funding. It started with this RSA grant. And then that grant went away. And so we relied mostly on our PTI funding.
Intermediate unit, NOLA Center. If you know
There we go. And so we relied on our PTI funding. And actually, can you put back again, Missy? So I will tell you that during that time where we didn't have the grant funding, that was the time that the youth work building on the youth work was the slowest. And so we continued to do the presentations because our Parent Training and Information Center grant had a small amount of money to support that, but it was very small. And so because I was the transition coordinator and I was working with families with children with disabilities, I didn't actually have as much time to devote to the youth piece. And so one of the things I tell people as I talk to people after the NTAC conference last year from different states is, for us, it took a long time because many of us are doing many different jobs. And so what I encourage people to do is just to not give up, to just keep working at it, because it might take some time, especially if you're not a person who is just employed to do the youth advice or to do youth work. And then 5 years ago, we were part of a network of PPIs, 7 PTIs that applied for another OSRS grant to do specifically youth work. And so that's really where we have had the funding to support youth, to give stipends or gift cards, or just to encourage them to work with us. I know many of the youth that I work with will do this when we don't have the funding, but at the same time, it's nice to have something for them. And that's where we've had the money to do the business cards and to just do a little bit more and focus a little bit more on youth work. And then the other organizations that you see on the screen, the Reach in the middle is actually the name of the grant that we're working under with the 7 other parent centers. So it's Reach for Transition. And then the State Department of Education, CERC, Department of Developmental Services, and Department of Rehabilitation Services, a lot of what they provided and a lot of what CPAC has provided is that in-kind support. So it hasn't always been, historically, hasn't always been direct funding, but it's been people that will provide support, and anything that we've needed, we've been able to find it through our network in the community of practice. And so that's been very, very valuable, as well as all of these organizations send youth into the Youth Advisory Board. And then more recently, these organizations have started to provide some financial funding, especially around getting the youth to the NTACT conference in North Carolina in May. People are very excited about that. So I've had a lot of support. So my best answer around funding is it takes a village. We were very fortunate to have a couple of grants that came through because of being the Parent Training Information Center and receiving some RSA funding. But that's not always going to be available. In fact, the grant that I'm working under now ends September 30th. And so in a couple of weeks, I'll be at a conference and we'll be talking about sustainability. So in North Carolina, I'll actually add a bunch of information to this presentation about how we're going to sustain the youth work that we've been doing. We're working with the State Department of Education and all of these organizations to make sure that this work continues. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that at the end. All right, yeah, next slide. So this is the Youth Advisory Board Facebook page. I'll be quite honest, because Facebook is for moms and dads typically. We don't have a lot of youth. We're interacting with this page right now. And my hope is that we will have an Instagram account. And we had talked about some other social media. I think Instagram will be the other direction we'll go soon, because we really want, we really want to interact with youth at this place on social media. And I recognize that Facebook is probably not the best way to do it, but it is what we have right now. So, and we do have some on there, but just not as many as I would like. So we can go on to the next one. But if you search the Connecticut Secondary Transition Youth Advisory Board, you can join the group, ask to join the group. We'd love to have you on there and contributing. And then this is the information that we hand out. So on the left is the fact sheet. That information at the beginning is all on the fact sheet. I believe that this is available to download or will be available. It's just question and answer, basic format about the Youth Advisory Board and what we do. And then the other handout is actually what we use when we're out at outreach and networking events. And so if we have students that would like to be a member, we want to capture their information. And so they don't always give us all of it, but name and email address and phone number is good. And then you'll see, this is what I was talking about. Can you scroll up just a little bit, Missy? All the different ways to be involved. And so we found that came from very early on. We did a call and I said, so, what should this group look like? And what should this group, it was with youth and the mentors. And I asked, what kinds of things they would like to do. And so I made some suggestions, but many of them came up with other things. So some of them on the call don't want to be public speakers. They don't want to sit on a panel. But I had a couple that really wanted to share their success stories. And so I was like, great, let's do that. So we came up with this list of all these things that youth and young adults can do. And it was, we've actually, most of them, we've had youth and students do. They reviewed some of the documents for the State Department that are targeted toward youth, self-advocacy guide and a transition guide. So we have a lot of things going on that are, not just the panels, but we have this whole group that we can tap into. The Youth Advisory Board logo that you saw at the top, that actually, that one right there with the 3 people, that was a whole email exchange about, place your votes, kind of what do you want to see. We have some choices. Students were able to pick what they wanted for that. So lots of different ways to be engaged, not just going out and talking with people. And then let's see what's next. Okay, so then we also have our secondary transition community of practice website. So that's cttransition.org. And we have a student section so people can sign up for our mailing list. Our mailing list is in MailChimp. So MailChimp is free, doesn't cost anything to run and to keep an email list, just a simple list in MailChimp. And so this is connected, signing up for the mailing list is connected with the MailChimp list. And then I create a mailing that goes out. I'd like it to go out every month, but it's gone out about every other month at this point. And with information and opportunities and just different pieces of information that youth and young adults may be interested in. Missy's going to the website. So yeah, we have that pop-up that shows up. And I believe we have a section, right, about, so the self-advocacy skills. Right there, yeah. It's funny having somebody else in control of the computer when I'm talking. So yeah, that's our website, so definitely check that out. And then this is a list of some of the places. So one thing that we talked about at the beginning is getting students and young adults onto planning committees and task forces and in all different places. And so that has been another big focus. One of the pieces of resistance that we ran into when we first started doing this was people said, well, we've tried this and it doesn't work. So it takes too much time to invite youth in and to cultivate youth to sit on some of these boards and committees, and to, they don't come, or they can't get there because they don't drive, or they can't come because it's during the day and they work. And we really worked hard to find, I believe that the right fit is out there. It takes some time to look and find the person or people that we need for whatever it is we're trying to get youth and student voice on. And so, again, there was a small group of us that we were like, yeah, we're not giving up. We're not going to say, well, we tried this and it didn't work. And so we're excited that we have youth that participate in the Connecticut Secondary Transition Community of Practice. We have youth on our core team. So we had a retreat in August, and we had Michael, Emily, and Jake attend and provide all kinds of great input and support. And we had it was near the beach, so we even went down to the beach, and we have some great pictures I'll share in North Carolina of that. Then the Secondary Transition Symposium Planning Committee, Emily is on that. Then have state leadership team, and so the youth that are in North Carolina with us in May will also be helping us with our state plan. The Connecticut Secondary Transition Task Force, we have had youth on that. We're currently looking for someone else to join that, because the thing that happens is sometimes you work with them and you enjoy working with them, and this is what happened with Christopher, and then they go and they get full-time jobs and don't have the time. And so we're really excited that they go into full-time jobs, because that's the point, that's the goal, that's what we want. But we're always sad to lose them, because we really enjoy working with them. And then our Bureau of Special Education asked us to find students for the State Advisory Council on Special Education. And so we currently have 2 that attend those meetings and provide input and support. So we're really proud that not only do we have students and youth within the secondary transition community, but because the State Department and the Bureau Chief have embraced the youth work, they're really being invited into other places that that are not specific to secondary transition. We're quite excited about that. Okay, so next slide. And so this is just my contact information from the fact sheet, and then so we receive referrals from. Oh, can you pop back for a second? Thanks. Giving away our fun slide. So we receive referrals from all over the place. School staff. The Youth Leadership Forum is a 4-day forum that happens at the University of Connecticut in July. And so I attend that and talk with a lot of youth. I don't attend all 4 days, but I attend one of the days and talk with youth about what we do and our work. And recently they have incorporated the Youth Advisory Board information in their packet that they send out to the youth that have been accepted as candidates for the Youth Leadership Forum. So it's become embedded in a lot of, oops, sorry about that, my other phone is ringing, embedded in a lot of the state work that youth do. Other members of the Youth Advisory Board, agency staff, parents often, will say, oh, I want to get my kids involved. And I speak with a lot of parents in the Parent Training and Information Center, so that happens frequently. And then other members of the community of practice. And then I just wanted to give Missy and Alicia a few minutes to talk about, from their perspective, the Youth Advisory Board. So you two want to pop on?
Yes, this is Alicia Trachis. I'm the Secondary Transition Coordinator at the Connecticut State Department of Education in the Bureau of Special Education. And really just to piggyback on the previous slide where it's listed some of the activities that our Youth Advisory Board, Student Voice, and Youth Leadership are engaged in. Many of those are State Department of Ed run committees and organizations that, under our Bureau Chief, Brian Klimkowitz, we are really driven to increase student voice and opportunities with our youth to be able to develop leadership skills, have a voice, and share their stories with others. And so I just wanted to highlight that it is something that the Connecticut State Department of Education is advocates for and is very much supportive and is working very collaboratively with Beth and our youth on the Youth Advisory Board to try to engage them and have them involved in our process of transitioning from high school to adulthood. As Missy, I think, had referenced before, when the Secondary Transition Symposium was being planned several years after, they said, why don't we have a student youth on our planning committee? And it's those opportunities that we're really trying to increase. If we're planning events for youth, we should be asking youth what they want to hear, what their interests are, what are the hot topics that they want to be involved in, what workshops do they want to go to, and we've been working very hard to continue to increase that. Oh, can I go there now?
No, did you want to say anything else, Missy? Did you want to add?
I don't think so. I think I've kind of, ran my mouth throughout the session. So I just think they're vital, and they're lots of fun. And I've had the wonderful opportunity of working with Emily and Michael on several occasions, and just listening to them talk and share and stuff. So it's everybody in North Carolina has a wonderful opportunity to hear them in May, and they will love it. They do a great job at presenting, and so I'm really quite excited about that. I have both Emily and Michael referenced that it was their pleasure to be on this call, speaking to the national community of practice, and I truly feel like the pleasure is ours to be able to listen to them and to learn from them and truly be partners with them. And so if we talk about improving student outcomes, they need to be at the table and they need to have a voice. So we believe that their voices matter, and it's our pleasure to be able to be involved in them in this process.
Thank you both. And I agree. It's an honor to be on this call and to be sharing this information. And one of the reasons we created this PowerPoint and wanted to share information in North Carolina is because after the Capacity Building Institute last year, there were several people. I actually was on several calls after throughout the summer with different states from around the country that really wanted this information. And so we put this information together so that people would have some information about how to the Youth Advisory Board. One piece that is missing here is we have a really great team, the actual young adults on the Youth Advisory Board. You just got a little tiny piece of that in this presentation. So they will be presenting at the NTEC conference in May, and I will do very little talking about when they're presenting, but we will be doing another session like this where we will really expand on the building of the Youth Advisory Board. I have a great understanding of we need to hear from the youth and want to hear from the youth, but the reason why this information was put together was because people were asking for it after the conference last year. So yeah, go on to the next slide. So we also have a lot of fun. This has been all, serious talking, but I hope that Emily and Michael will agree that we like to have fun, goof around. And so I always make them take a picture. I don't make them. They don't have to take a picture like this, but I always ask them if they'll make goofy faces for me to take a picture, because we do really like to have a good time as well. So yeah, that's it. We're happy to answer questions.
Alrighty, if anybody does have a question, go ahead. You can unmute if you want to ask the team from Connecticut. We'll give folks a minute to do that. Okay, not hearing any. And if you do have any questions, if you want to just type them in the chat box too, please feel free to do that. So really want to thank the folks from Connecticut, Beth and Emily, Michael, Alicia, and Missy. Thank you so much for presenting. I think you had some great suggestions for engaging youth in our states, and some, I think, issues that have come up in the past. I know in working in more specifically in Pennsylvania, some of the struggles that we had around funding, and I think you guys have addressed ways that you've been able to work through those in Connecticut. So again, thank you guys so much for presenting. We do have a question did come in. Just was basically just thanks for the information. It was a timely presentation, and I reiterate that. Thank you again, guys, for presenting. Thanks so much.
Michael, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So if people want to email us, we're happy to have people email us. And if there are questions that come up that you'd like us to address in North Carolina, we are happy to do that as well.
Great. Thank you so much. And we are recording this session, so we'll be sending that out along again with the handouts that the Connecticut team spoke about today. So again, thank you so much. Next, we just want to talk a little bit about coming up, and folks in Connecticut did reference the Capacity Building Institute, which is occurring the beginning of May 7th through the 9th at the Hilton Hotel in Charlotte. So there's, after a couple years being away from North Carolina and Charlotte and the Hilton Charlotte University Place, the conference will be held back there. It is a great facility. Wanted to let folks know that registration for the CBI is up and it's available. It'll be on the notes that I send out, but you can also go directly to the NTAC website under events and register there. We are scheduled for our community of practice face-to-face meeting as part of the CBI pre-sessions. So it will be on May 7th from 9:45 to 12:15. And during that time, Joan and I would like to go over and kind of just review where we're at as a national community of practice on transition. We're going to talk a little bit about sustainability strategies and engagement strategies that all of our state partners are utilizing. We'd also like you all to share resources, promising practices, activities, products that you have developed around secondary transition. And then lastly, during that time, look at drafting our agenda for next year for 2019-20 for the National Community Practice. Also, in the follow-up to today's meeting, I will be sending out a survey link. This is basically a link to let us know if you will be attending our face-to-face meeting. If you are unable to attend, but you perhaps would like to connect virtually, we're going to explore that as an option. And then lastly, looking at topics of interest that you have for those that will be participating in the April 7th meeting. So look for that, and we encourage folks to have that filled out by the first week in April so we can work on planning the session. The last thing I just wanted to mention before we open this up to see if anybody has anything they'd like to add for today's meeting. Our next meeting is on April 22nd. As part of that meeting, we will be talking about self-advocacy, effective practices. So again, if states or any of the agencies or organizations on the call or part of the community would like to share what they're doing around self-advocacy, effective practices. Today was a great example of that from Connecticut, but if you have other things that you would like to share, we welcome that for our next meeting on April 22nd. So with that, I am going to open this up. If anybody has anything from their state, agency, or organization they'd like to share, you can unmute and just jump in. We'll give you a couple minutes to do that. And Joan, if you're still on, I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
No, I'm here.
All righty.
Thanks.
Okay, we'll just give folks a minute if they have anything they want to add. If not, I do appreciate you all joining us. And again, a shout out to the folks from Connecticut for presenting today. Look for an email in the next couple of days from our National Community Practice listserv. It will have the link from today's session, as well as the registration for our face-to-face meeting in Charlotte. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and have a great week ahead. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Michael and Joan.
Okay.
Thanks. Take care,
Bye.
guys.